Is it what you want? Are we willing to become what we seek? The answer to our own prayers. The upcoming new moon in Pisces invites us all to reflect on any emotional release, preventing a more soul-led, intuitive alignment. Encouraging we slow down, trust the unfolding of events, and flow with the undercurrents of change. Emphasizing surrender, self-awareness, and the integration of both personal and collective experiences for the introspection, spiritual growth, and reassessment of long-term goals now needed. As we relax outdated patterns, embrace stillness, and reconnect with the inner elder feminine wisdom now rising. I didn't want to watch the dragon warship leave Portsmouth shores. To think of the parents, partners, children saying goodbye to their loved ones, or the generations of my own that either never returned or did so changed forever. As I considered whether the prayers to the ocean the day before for peace had gone unheard or, worse, been acted upon. I didn't want to hold space for my husband today as he returned from the dentist to the same removal plan for his own teeth as mine, admitting in asking for an improvement of his health that this may be part of it. I didn't want to retrieve the spearite or warrior's stone from my mother's grave that I'd lost 6 weeks prior on Mother's Day. To be tending to the land of ancestors so desperately missed or taken too early, acutely aware of the injustices that remained in my own currently struggling family, or reminded of the help I'd sought, subsequently requiring action on my part. I didn't want to be writing the New Moon blog so close to its happening, despite opportunities to complete it earlier, as I acknowledged both the timing of it wasn't at 1:23 a.m. when I would have preferred, or my desperation to force an uncanny, structured, familiar order. And I most certainly didn't want the theme song given to highlight the energies of any of the insights, suggesting in a time of collective chaos that I, or we, do the almost impossible and relax. But what I did want, need, rely on even throughout it all was the guidance of something greater than my own perception, whilst remaining open to receiving it however it was given, an answer to prayers that would keep me strong in all I'm being asked to hold, share, offer, and be, which came in the form of a clay Cherokee rose from a dear friend, and my husband's return from the market with a DVD, just for me. Despite not knowing I'd sought clarity or my own familiar connection to the guide in front of me. Now, finally trusting the timing, I can't help but smile at the Enter the Dragon and Warrior's Journey films, promoting a more universal response from me regardless of what I believe I desired. Something we're all being encouraged to reflect on this week, as the Aquarius new moon cycle makes way for a Piscean-like beginning with so many planets joining it. The only way to be is of water, still, motionless, and flowing into the undercurrent of change. Whether through the seasons coinciding with Mercury's almost endless retrograde after the last few months, the equinox reframing balance, or the collective astrological shift into Aries, the upcoming energies will bring forth the official new year we've been yearning for. Meaning now is the time to commit to personal goals by taking a leap of faith into what we may have, for whatever reason, been avoiding. Of course, accepting doesn't mean advocating or even allowing, but finally moving through and beyond imperfections, our own, alongside the collective, focusing instead any imagination towards a more authentically aware conceptual consciousness. That being said, if we want the tides of time to turn, there is an encouragement to make well-being rather than doing essential, as we realise the dream not only consists but is reliant upon more peaceful, rejuvenating activities. Despite, or maybe because of how things seem, we are being given an opportunity to make important changes in our lives, which, when harmonising with Uranus in its current sextile, calls for more inspiration, simply through the belief we may or may not have in our own progress. What we choose to concentrate on will become the direction that leads us, both externally and from within, as we acknowledge the continual, almost repetitive message being whispered in transits, communicated through collective cosmic movement, and for some, deafening in restrictive physical responses. Change demands a rewiring, unfolding narrative of itself through our infinite chaotic reaction to it. Subtle at times, selectively soft, for those open and receptive to the psyche's depths beyond the obvious, almost distractive, psychic influx of information, the soul-led shifts are unmistakable, alongside the level of trust and faith required to continue to see them through. As held in the final zodiac sign, the moon herself is birthing, the grandmother of all we gravitate to. It is the Piscean surrender of beauty, divination, and inspiration that now grounds each of us home to something intangible within current patterns. Cycles, and they're often forgotten, misrepresented, egoically confused frustrations. Time is of the essence in how essential it has become, both in our unrequited emotions, the allowance of love, presence, relaxation, and nurture of feelings, alongside, whether we can admit it or not, where we may have bitten off more than we can chew, especially when things suck. Taking agency then for the subsequent overwhelm and collective consequences of this must be at the centre of our experiences, if we want to leave the metaphorical crossroads this lunar phase encourages reflection of. Regardless of planetary movement, external conflicts, hoarding of often less than humanitarian suggestions, be that food, provisions, opinions, or lessons, the focus is on the journey itself, not the scarcity that may have initiated it. Only here can we move from the archetypal fool, recognize the savior complex of the hero, and become the warrior we came here to be. Inviting a collective shift through the fear to the intentions beneath them, the challenges, every injustice, pain, and outcome, the celebrations, love, joy, and wisdom, each continual step that has led us to our current standstill, as we reclaim the courage it has taken to get here, be with our own embodied truth, and whether we like it or not, relax, releasing what no longer flows, embracing our emotions, listening to a more evolved inner knowing, allowing the stillness to surrender, and existing rather than exiting the dreamlike imaginations necessary to land them into the present moment. Now more than ever, we are being guided to let go, feel, trust, soften, and be, as the waters of the Great Mother's mother prepare to birth something different from within us all. However, things are just beginning. Regardless of how it may seem out there, bulbs are cracking through the soil, mirroring our own awareness, emerging once again through another level of awakened darkness. We are still on the cusp, and rather than charging forward, it is the deep feminine wisdom that must now plunge with trust into the mystery of what is, before any direction can be gained, as we internally explore where we are seeking it from, and, of course, how aligned we are to the often unknown greater conception occurring around us. Taking time instead to appreciate the stages we find ourselves individually in. That doesn't mean bypassing the external, an ironic concept that can only really exist in the naivety of separation, but recognizing and restructuring the dramas playing out from within as a necessary reconnection, no, reconfiguration of emotional knowing from the guide inside, supporting each of us to explore our personal desires while simultaneously challenging societal expectations that question how willing we are to walk the path of the peaceful, no less luminous, visual veteran. Regardless, what we like or not is irrelevant, for the very veins of the earth now calls for more in our presence and ultimately embodiment of the new beginnings stirring, albeit uncomfortably, deep within the collective soil, demanding we provide safe passage to move with them, tangibly or otherwise for some, not the other way around. Of course, in reality, it is one and the same: manifestation, creation, intention, action. Just as endings form starts and shifts flow through or because of restriction and force. And we are being invited to remember this in a reciprocal world, ourselves and each other, as we too embrace the consequences of our own actions in her reflection. A recognition that will inevitably require a greater understanding of our place and purpose within life, over the current without trauma-based mentality unfolding, be that provisions or our less than beliefs towards comparable possibilities. Thankfully, there is a memorable, advanced reality of spirituality rising to remind us any ignorance of physical desires will only expand the liminal spaces we find ourselves in, which, whilst adapted to by many accustomed to walking the realms, is in itself set to shift. As seasons and axis around us move, so too, with Mercury communing its final retrograding factors within Pisces, aspecting the North Node, alongside Saturn and Neptune in the first zodiac of Aries, will our own perspectives around resourcefulness, ensuring the past speaks with and to our future selves, weaving endings back into the infinite loop of the intentions that, for some decades ago, conceived them. Facing a time of purpose and direction, soul growth and intuition, it is awareness of the heart's wisdom and felt sense that will bring forth any surety regarding the divine frequency that, as mentioned with the Virgo full moon eclipse, is emerging from the land beneath us. Call it the rose lineage and the brotherhood this will call upon, the ley lines of the earth, the dragon ancient powers of old, or pure, plain and simple injustices of our current situations. We can undoubtedly expect a more intimate surrender, response and pull towards the high vibrational energies being admitted, not only via the sun's electromagnetic pulse, but the increased cellular remembrance of it within our own heart-based receptivity. A wisdom our bodies know and require we open up to in order to exist with, rather than exit from, our emotional realities. Happening in a mutable sign of water, known for its vivid imagination and love of escapism, in the shadow period of mercurial communication, any intentions will be best defined through introspection, as the necessary "into me I see" will determine how ready we actually are for what we are asking, ensuring in the process it is more than a knee-jerk reaction to what we no longer want, revealing what is hidden between the sheets, so to speak, of our own shadow's longings. With Uranus in Taurus, any exploration holds the promise of a more grounded, stable, applicable approach to epiphanies received, supporting an ever-increasing, undisputable responsibility that in truth it is our perception that needs changing, not only in how we see the world and ourselves within it, but of sight itself. Moving beyond the predictable predictions of a future yet to be written based on what was, to the witnessing of more, through the expansion of our I, to the long-term vision of inner sight we have, for whatever reason until now, remained blinded to. Whether that's the potential we are elusively waiting to be ready, relationships that have silently yearned for growth and recognition, none more so than our own with ourselves, or the often misdirected anger that continues to burn out the sacred flame of self-denial beneath it all. There is no doubt this understated new moon is one of the most transformative placements in March, overshadowed by the equinox, the Mars-like emphasis of the war-raged masculine at present, and the turning of the astrological year. For those wishing for release from the external confusion and emotional restrictions, it is alignment to the at times inconvenient, powerful sensitivities being experienced that will produce more intuitive decisions. As this Piscean lunation creates not only a less severe, no less existential severing of outdated patterns, but the cosmic collaboration of a closure, clarity, contextual cycle that could, with practice and dedication, become the very framework to support us through the change 2026 was always set to bring. Boundaries in the linear belief structure of separation are dissolving. Instead, a more spiral, soul-led, community-based understanding will initiate us each to tie up loose ends this week by simply admitting where they are inhabiting the space needed to deliver anything different. We're in this together, immaterial of how fair it may seem, be that the repetitive realities we are observing or our own unfinished, undeniable, unrealistic expectations of them, that are empowering us to focus instead on what we do have, can do, and deeper still are here for, rather than the illusion of what we don't, can't, or aren't. Working with this presumption, tomorrow's new moon is not about doing more, but releasing what is less, with emphasis on reflection. Embracing compassionately the last 12 months, and indeed, collectively, accounts from 2020. The sequences transpiring become the acceptance and transition of any unresolved emotions, or moreover, our experiences of them. By slowing down, turning inwards, creativity initiates a more conscious response, especially if we can gift ourselves the time to listen to what needs to now come out of us. Tuning into the wider sensation of how we want our lives to feel instead of the logical understanding of specific goals, in order to consider the energy actually moving us forward. Particularly in the feminine soul or physical body, as what was once productive, essential even in a fight or flight world, when recognized for its defensiveness, holds the opportunity to define the clarity we seek within a more unified, balanced, laser-like convergence. Led through a strong barrier of internal knowing rather than external expectations, whilst this new moon isn't an eclipse, it is held within the darkened, illusionary season, much like us all to an extent, of its predecessors, fundamentally supporting confrontation of any controlling institutions, beliefs, and resistance to authority or governing bodies, none more so than our own, towards an introspective accountability of the past we have known, in its current acceptance, as we negotiate our true hopes for the future through the actions that may or may not reflect them. This does not mean a more sustainable approach based on what we have previously discovered, generationally especially, isn't beneficial, just that without self-resilience and honest alignment to everything we feel, including the reasons for our reactions, we will never consider ourselves safe. Instead, there is a more mature calling for the very triangle of needs that must now be met. Beyond Maslow's inverted hierarchy, believed to be taken, rewritten to suit a more colonial, segregated practice from its community-based indigenous roots, the element of fire itself and any transformation, enlightenment, or change, to the accepted power of drama cycles we may find ourselves in and or perpetuating, as we offer agency to any imbalanced sacred unions, be that in our families, counties, or countries, systems of hope and faith, masculine and feminine principles, work, or the very world we claim to be in service to. It is going to take effort. Evolution, which is where we are, requires more than wishful thinking. With Mars in Pisces now pulling our law of attraction towards a more restorative solution, it is the expansion of Jupiter in Cancer that if we can see, honour and respect the individual steps required behind long-term manifestation, will provide any necessary supreme certainty. Ensuring our intentions are increasingly selfless, with Venus in Aries squaring this placement, we may ironically, despite internal doubts, find ourselves readily available to invest in any new direction based on a more affordable or worthy outcome, bringing forth not only the potential of financial balance, but the abundant recognition and backing of a universally aligned way of thinking, and in this, creating. Provided, of course, we can remember they are one and the same. Because with Mercury stationary in Pisces, practical matters on an individual level alone may well remain unclear and constrictive until April. Inevitably inviting us all to find stillness, pause for clarity, and remember, with 4 planets and the North Node in water, if we want something, we must move with it in the current flow of our own life. Appearing less action-based yet primal in its womb-like wisdom, we are being held in immense atmospheric possibilities. As, in this powerful point of ascension, we redefine the language of balance for the axis mundi it has now become. Be that the 2 roads, the religious cross-in of our own faith, the structure that turns the wheel of fortune, or the body's knowing, ready to be received as the guide it's always been. If we want to come full circle, we must find a way to adapt to changes in speed, both outside and vibrating from within, now positioning us back into a more purposed core nature. Occurring in the 3rd decan, known as the placement of the impossible, linked to the mythical Pegasus, an archetype we could well hear more from in less than positive ways over the coming month, the sense of restlessness and anticipation felt in the foundations of what was and somehow still seems to be is palpable, igniting an undeniable urge to rush forward. Any courage, however, currently resides in knowing the avoidable patterns of impatience. As we witness this necessary stability and spiritual growth, our own included, for the inspiration needed. From here, it is the resilience of regeneration that will prepare us for the spark of new life in Aries less than 24 hours later, set to nurture the ideas and concepts held and holding within the Piscean waters of our own psyche. Linked to the 10 of Cups in the Tarot, we are reminded that emotional fulfillment is actually evident, always, for those willing to become it. Happening in the UK on the 19th of March at 1:26 a.m, offering the numerical structure of the Magician, High Priestess, Empress, Lovers, Hermit, Wheel of Fortune, Sun, Temperance, and Hierophant overall. It is the light we create with that intuitively decides the transformation desired. Manifesting the focus of our lessons, balancing them from the inside out as we establish the teachings of our own inner visions through the often dogmatic systems we ultimately believe in. May we each realize our inner tensions, regardless how relaxed, reflect the times to come. In deepest munay, I ask you now, or is that what was always needed of you? You know where I am. Take care. Kirsty.